rupees. The cost of one social housing unit is estimated at 2.7 million rupees. Government will provide a subsidy of 67% of the cost of construction of a housing unit, that is 1.8 million rupees per housing unit. Thus, a total subsidy of 14.4 billion rupees will be required for the 8,000 social housing units. Mr. Speaker, sir, honorable members will recall that in the 2020-2021 budget, the House voted a sum of 12 billion rupees for this project. This sum was transferred to the Project Development Fund in that financial year for implementation of the project. Out of this amount, 10 billion rupees was earmarked for the subsidy element and 2 billion rupees for land acquisition and other services. There is therefore a gap of 4.4 billion rupees on the subsidy element. An additional amount of around 600 million rupees will be required for other related expenditures, such as off-site infrastructure works that will have to be undertaken to complete the project. The contracts for construction works for this project are expected to be awarded shortly. Thus, with a view to ensuring smooth implementation of this priority project, a sum of 5 billion rupees has been included in the estimates of supplementary expenditure of this financial year to meet the financing gap in terms of government subsidy. Mr. Speaker, sir, as a small island developing state, Mauritius, by virtue of its geographical characteristics, is highly vulnerable to the adverse impacts of climate change, including an increase in flood and drought events, landslides, severe tropical cyclones, tidal surges, sea level rise, and beach erosion. In fact, the sea level at mainland Mauritius, at the island of Rodrigue, is rising at a higher rate than the global average. This is leading to a rapid erosion of our beaches. In some places, the width of the beach has been reduced by up to 20 meters over the past decade. This is already having repercussions on economic activities around these regions, and more specifically on the tourism sector. Mr. Speaker, sir, the setting up of the National Environment and Climate Change Fund has enabled the implementation of a number of projects to protect and embellish the environment, address landslide issues, and protect the coastal region, for which a total of 5.6 billion rupees have already been spent since 2018. For this fund, major coastal protection, landscaping and infrastructural works have been carried out in the regions of Pointe-aux-Feuilles to Grand Sable, Petit Sable to Bambou-Vieyeux, and Providence. Works are ongoing in the regions from Anjonché to Bambou-Vieyeux and Bois des Amourettes. The site at Deux Frères, which is an ex-sand landing platform, has suffered serious erosion and socio-economic decline following the banning of sand extraction in 2001. The coastal stretch at Deux Frères is highly vulnerable to coastal inundation, erosion, and climate change impacts, putting existing infrastructure at risk. Moreover, the Deux Frères site, lying on the southwest bank of the estuary of Grande Rivière Sud-Est, is today a nodal point for many activities for tourists and the local public. Some tourist-related activities at Grande Rivière Sud-Est require transboarding from catamaran to small boats in the river, which has safety implications. The proposed contribution of 417 million rupees to the National Environment and Climate Change Fund is thus required to finance the construction of a waterfront at Deux Frères as an urgent adaptation measure being undertaken by this government. Government has recently approved the implementation of this priority project under the National Environment and Climate Change Fund. The objectives of the project are to contain coastal degradation and increase coastal resilience against the adverse impacts of climate change and substantially mitigate the risk to the public and to the infrastructure thereat. It will also boost economic activities and generate employment for inhabitants in the region in line with our vision for an inclusive, high-income, and green Mauritius. This is a clear example of responsible investment by this government to proactively mitigate climate change disruptions and uplift the economic potential of the region. The House may note that the relevant preparatory works for the project have already been completed, including the EIA report, the detailed design report, and the draft tender documents for works. The project is therefore ready to be implemented. The cost of the project is estimated at 417 million rupees. Accordingly, 417 million rupees has been included in this bill as contribution to the National Environment and Climate Change Fund for meeting the cost of construction works. Mr. Speaker, sir, detail on the items of expenditure that require the supplementary appropriation are set out in the estimates of supplementary expenditure that have already been laid before the National Assembly. Despite this supplementary appropriation of 5.4 billion rupees, the budget deficit as well as the public sector debt for the current financial year are expected to be close to the budget targets as underspending are expected under other votes of expenditure. Mr. Speaker, sir, I now commend the bill to the House.
Seconded by
I have listened carefully to what the Honourable Minister of Finance had to say. A bit surprised that he spoke more about the project at Deux Frères for 400 million rupees than the 5 billion rupees that he's asking us to vote. A bit surprised, as if on dirait lave la main. Anyway, Mr. Speaker, I will not mince my words in my speech this morning. I'm going to say things as they are. I don't think there's any need for sugarcoating. We are asked here in this House to approve the huge amount of money, 5,000 million rupees, in addition to the 12,000 million rupees already put into the COVID-19 Development Fund. What will happen to this 5 billion rupees of money? It will be passed on, if this bill is voted as expected, to the COVID-19 Development Fund. And then from the COVID-19 Development Fund, this money will go to an obscure company, recently unknown and perfectly obscure company called National New Social, I don't even remember the name fully, New Social Living Development Company or something of that sort. This company is entirely owned by taxpayers. It's not owned by any minister. It's not owned by the Deputy Prime Minister. It is entirely owned by taxpayers. And it is headed by one Mr. Ahmad Abdul. Who is he? Has he ever made any statement? Has he ever been transparent? Has he ever been accountable? Would you recognize this gentleman in the street who is going to spend up to 30 billion rupees of our money and obviously the purchasers, people who purchase the house? Do we know this gentleman? Nobody knows him. And this gentleman has never come out at all to explain what he's doing. So we can justly and rightly expect that it is a Deputy Prime Minister that steps up and provides the information that this House and the population badly require. I am happy that he will be speaking later on today, or during the debate at least, and I will ask the Deputy Prime Minister to come out fully with all the information that I am going to ask for, and maybe other members too, to this House. Mr. Speaker, the Deputy Prime Minister, he has himself declared last week that it was his decision in 2021 to entrust, or his or the Cabinet's decision when he was around, to entrust this huge construction to this new company, NSLD, that he said last week in this House. He, I presume, appointed the Board of Directors. He also appointed, through the Board of Directors, the managers, one of whom, Mr. D. HHW, was previously known as the richest man in Rodrigues. He may still be, maybe in the Indian Ocean. And another person, Mr. S., who is very controversial. So these two persons, I say that because it is not proper for us not to have information, not in this situation where huge amounts of money are being given, and I have question marks on the persons who are supposed to be managing and spending this money for us. The chairman, who is unknown, and some of these other persons have had checkered careers and certainly bad reputations. Now, I'm going to ask Mr. Speaker a number of important questions, and I would expect that the Deputy Prime Minister answers all of them without objection. And again, he's not answering the Leader of the Opposition. He's answering the nation, because we represent, in this Parliament, Mr. Speaker, we carry the voice of the people insofar as requests for information are concerned. Now I hope that his meeting with Cardinal Piat yesterday brings some fruit, and that we're going to see a new Deputy Prime Minister, open to promote democracy, open to promote transparency, because as we know, transparency and democracy are the best ways of fighting corruption and of exposing incompetence wherever they are. Monsieur le Speaker, il est proposé de rétablir le droit de regard du Parlement sur toute institution financée de l'argent public. Do you recognize this phrase, Deputy Prime Minister? It comes from a book that you wrote yourself in 1994, September 1994, entitled La lutte pour la démocratie et contre la drogue et la corruption. I'm only saying this because I wish to remind you of what you have said yourself at page 7, I think it is, et il est proposé de rétablir le droit de regard du Parlement sur toute institution financée de l'argent public. Here you are, you have the fantastic chance to put action behind your words and to walk the talk, and I'm sure by your nodding that you will do exactly that, and I will be grateful to that. So, Mr. Speaker, on the strength of our beliefs in democracy, we will never accept to vote 5 billion rupees of additional funds without the transparency and the accountability that we are asking today, because it represents, after all, hard-earned taxpayers' money paying for petrol and diesel and VAT and CSD, all this being paid. And we, the government, are les gestionnaires de cet argent-là. And there must be accountability. There cannot be democracy without accountability. And we're talking, Mr. Speaker, of what? A project, if you add the cost of the land, the off-site, the cost of NSLD, etc., we're talking about 25 billion to 30 billion rupees, 30,000 million rupees. I see the Minister of Finance is nodding. That is the amount of money that we're speaking, 30,000 million rupees. And it's not 5 cents. It is a huge amount of money. And, Mr. Speaker, as I mentioned, the Deputy Prime Minister entrusted the project to the NSLD, appointed the people there. He is fully accountable for what happens there, Mr. Speaker. He could have had other options, huh? He could have had other options, and we talk about these options. He decided on this. So now, let's talk about the pitfalls of what, and possible issues arising from his decision and the Cabinet's decision of post-June 2021 budget, as was told by us, we were told last week, Mr. Speaker. Now let me start first. The first question, I have a series of questions, if you will bear with me. My first question, for decades now, I think 30 years, social housing has been constructed primarily, but not only, but primarily by a company called NHDC, National Housing Development Company. Now, for some reason, and we can discuss about the reason in a moment, it was thought that this NHDC, which has 130 people working for it, it's not a small company. This NHDC was no longer going to be able to run this project. No, no, no. We needed a totally new company. NSLD this time. New company. Entrusted, as I say, to these people that we just mentioned. And, Mr. Speaker, sir, the NHDC was set aside. Why? Because we were told we were going to have a new concept, lifts in the buildings, huge new concept. New concept, zero. Résultat, Mr. Speaker. We ended a new concept with water reticulation and a playground for kids and 20 square meters of commercial space. That's all. I'm sure the NHDC would have been able to do that. Don't you agree? If we are talking about adding water reticulation, a playground, and commercial space of 20 square meters, I think the NHDC would have been able to do that. But it was not given to NHDC, even though the whole new project, living project, which was a dream, but a pipe dream, never to happen. It was a wild dream. It was set aside. We ended up with exactly the same project and then the SDC would have done anyway. Exactly the same, apart from these three two things. So why then, once the project was abandoned, why then not give it back to NHDC? 130 people there. It's only got 2 projects ongoing, I think one at Houghton and one at Maud Albay, if I'm not mistaken. So it's not like sort of overwhelmed with work, NHDC. It's only got a few hundred houses to make at the moment. 130 people working there. So why then? What is the advantage of having a subsidiary of NHDC. With the advantage, Mr. Speaker, Honorable Deputy Prime Minister probably knows very well, is found in the Public Procurement Act. The huge advantage for government is found in the Public Procurement Act. In particular, it is found in Schedule 1 of the Public Procurement Act, because NHDC happens to be in Part 4 of the schedule of the Public Procurement Act. What does that mean? Simple. It means that for every contract above 100 million rupees, NHDC, has to abide by the Public Procurement Act. It has to issue tenders. It has to go through the CPB. It has to have projects. It has to have lots of things that ensure there is no hanky-panky and that ensures that the public get value for money. This is what the NHDC is actually. It is forced by law to do this. NSLD, being a new company, could have been placed on Schedule 1, Part 4 of the Public Procurement Act. But no, it was not. It is kept completely outside of the Public Procurement Act. That isn't the first time this happens. It's happened before, even previous governments. It's a bad thing. It's a bad thing. In other countries, wherever there is public money, then public procurement procedures apply. This has to be changed by a future government. You cannot continue like this, where for a subterfuge, a contract worth up to 30 billion rupees will get done without any of the safeguards that this legislature has set up and put into law, because of a loophole is that for new companies, you actually have to physically put that company on that schedule, otherwise it is totally unknown to the Public Procurement Act. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, we also say the poor Director of Audit has been auditing God knows what. But this is not going to be audited by the Director of Audit Act. This is going to be completely outside the Director of Audit. The Board of Directors, the Minister, will choose himself which auditor they want to appoint. It's not going to be the Director of Audit. So that law has to be changed. This loophole needs to be plugged. It is totally unacceptable, especially as we're going to talk in a moment about how the company has proceeded with this allocation, Mr. Speaker. Now, question 2, Mr. Speaker. We've talked about an additional provision. There was apparently so much for the land, so much for this and that, 2 billion for land and additional services. We are adding 600 million more, 600 million more for this land and that, if I understood correctly what the Honorable Minister of Finance said. So, up to now, the NSLD has been a total fiasco. Up to now. This can change by miracle, maybe. But up to now, it has been a total fiasco. 2 failed tenders. Why? They say, if you listen to the Deputy Prime Minister, it's because the contractors have gone mad. Somehow they went mad and they quoted figures 5 times more than they should have quoted. Apparently, they no longer wish to get the contract. They just want to rule themselves out of the contract. Because he said himself that the cost of the NHDC house, latest cost, is 1.8 million. I'm not sure that is exactly correct. I think it's a bit more, but still. And for the tenders that he floated, he received offers of 13.5 million per house. Now, isn't there a QS appointed by the NSLD? Don't you have a QS there? What did you do? Did you hang the QS? Don't you have a QS? Are they not supposed to tell you the cost of material, the cost of this and that, and give you a ballpark figure? Can they give you an estimate of 1.8 million, and when you open the tenders, you get 3, 4, 5 times that amount? Something went wrong. I understand that the QS, the figures of the QS were disregarded by NSLD, and that you persisted with your tender, even though at least some of the QSs told you there was no way that your dream project could be financed, could be included into a price of about 2 million rupees. So we appointed architects, we appointed project managers, QSs, highly paid people. Hundreds of millions of rupees went up in smoke. I'm told 500 million, some people go up to 1 billion rupees wasted because the amateurism of the NSLD. Wasted because they could not understand that the house they were proposing was far beyond the means of the NSLD, let alone the means of the poor purchasers who are going to buy this. That is the truth. You cannot put the blame on the contractors. You need to accept the blame. The NSLD needs to accept the blame. Hundreds of millions of rupees, months and months of waiting. In fact, if you read carefully what the Deputy Prime Minister said last week, he said, we were told in June 2021, there's the money, get on with it. We couldn't get on with it because of COVID confinement. COVID confinement was in 1 month. It was in March, not more than that. So you cannot blame COVID either. So we can only blame incompetence, Mr. Speaker. 500 to 1 billion rupees wasted. Who will refund this money to the taxpayers? It's money that has been wasted by the guys at NSLD, supervised by the ministry. Who is going to refund this to the taxpayers? So, Mr. Speaker, my question is this. Please, can the Deputy Prime Minister give us a detailed list of all the amounts that have been spent since June 2021 on professional fees, QS, architects, etc., and also, Mr. Speaker, and I come to question 3, on land that has been purchased. How much land has been purchased? Where has it been purchased? How much did it cost? And what is the acreage? So that we can determine it's only fair, this is taxpayers' money, I remind everyone, how much and who we can find out actually you bought this from. It's important. All the questions, I see the Deputy Prime Minister is nodding, are absolutely fair questions that any taxpayer would ask you at the moment concerning this project, and I'm continuing with my question. So who, what has been purchased, and if you can tell us also, a number of land has been apparently non-constructible, tell us also which ones there are, if you know at the moment, and what you plan to do with that. It's unfortunate, but let's see what you come up with in terms of figures, in terms of land that cannot be used for construction, if that is the case. Mr. Speaker, my question 4 concerns the project itself. Now, what you want to construct, you won't be able to construct your dream project. That was a pipe dream. You are going to construct something like the NSDC has done up to now with water reticulation, playground for kids, etc. Now, you see, the detail is in the devil is in the detail. We all know that for housing projects, small is beautiful. Small is beautiful, not for everything, but for housing projects, that is the case. Small is beautiful. The bigger the more houses that you put on one plot of land, the greater the social problems that you have. Because you are putting people from different places, they're not a community, different places, different backgrounds, they all come and live in close proximity to each other, and you have problems. The best, Mr. Speaker, this famous saying, The road to hell is paved with good intentions. The road to hell is paved with good intentions. Look at La Valette. It was meant to be, I don't want to stigmatize, so I will be careful what I say. I don't want to, Mr. Ganou probably knows La Valette well. I know you know your constituency very well. Huh? Exactly, I'm going to say. Relax, relax. Relax. We'll talk about your case in a moment if you want. Now, yes, I'm sure you are.
No conversation. Make your speech.
If he talks to me, what do I say?
Make your speech.
Now, yes, I mentioned Mr. Ganou's name. He probably knows it well, La Valette. He knows a lot of things well. Now, La Valette constructed by one of our predecessors, 200 houses. NEF was supposed to take care of it. There's a crash, there's everything. Unfortunately, it has gone down and down and down. It is not a pleasant place to live. See, I'm not saying anything. Not a pleasant place to live. It was,
no conversation.
It was a project that went wrong. Also, and mainly, because of the number of houses put in one place. Would you be surprised, Mr. Speaker? This La Valette, which is not a pleasant place to live anymore, they are constructing these guys, this government, next door to La Valette. The same number of houses again.
Honourable member, you would agree with me.
The same number of houses again.
Concentrate on your speech.
This is what I'm doing.
The speech is about appropriation.
Of what? Of what?
On the
of 5 billion rupees for housing.
The construction of 12,000 houses.
What am I talking about?
Not La Valette. Not La Valette.
I'm saying, Mr. Speaker, that you cannot construct ghettos. You have to construct small units. That is what I'm saying. And if you look at what is being said here, there are 500, 600 houses on one plot of land. And this is a ghetto that's in construction. And that is what I'm saying. Now, deep breath, I get my calm again. Now, Mr. Speaker. Coromandel, 550 houses. We just said La Valette, 200 houses is the problem. Coromandel, 550 houses. And you're going to put upwards of 2,000 people in Coromandel. Upwards of 2,000 people. Balisson, I don't know where Balisson is, 400 houses there. We're talking about what? 1,600 upwards of people in one place. From all sorts of life, from all places coming to live there. Many of them, by definition, are not going to be very rich people. That is why they live there. But they would have given their hard-earned money to pay for 1/3 of that house. We have to be decent to them. This is their life saving that they're going to put there. We cannot ask them to buy into a place that in 5 years' time will be unlivable. And so you go on Notre Dame, Mr. Speaker, 400 houses. L'Espérance Trébuchet, 400 houses. Arsenal, 350 houses, 1,500 people. And so on and so forth. And so on and so forth. Small is beautiful when you're creating communities. Small is beautiful, and we are going in the other direction. It was a serious point, you see, Mr. Speaker. I wasn't wasting your time, nor my time. So, Mr. Speaker, this is my fourth question. Why are we constructing ghettos? Let us take a bit more time, maybe, and give these people the sort of housing that we'll be proud of in 20 years' time. Small. Let's keep the same houses. I'm not saying give them a chateau, but the same houses in smaller plots, and everyone, Mr. Speaker, will live happily ever after. And this, Mr. Speaker, qu'est arrivé, le Jonga? Quel est ton problème?
Honourable members, no conversation. Please continue with
Thank you very much. Throw him out if necessary. Huh? Let him go and speak to Cardinal Lava. Now, Mr. Speaker, I'm going to ask a question on the allowance. When I was Minister of Finance, I gave 200 rupees per housing unit for the Sanjik. I'm sure you know about this. That 200 rupees has remained 200 rupees since 2013. And that is the reason why so many housing units have at least some decent environment. It's time. Now we're spending billions and billions also to think about the Minister of Finance has got his budget in a few weeks. To increase this, come on, at least with inflation, this is a decent thing that we can do for them. So, Mr. Speaker, my fourth question was, why construct ghettos? The fifth question, Mr. Speaker, is the price. I'll come back to this tender. He told us last week, Mr. Speaker, and not last week, during the PNQ, we were all a bit shocked, huh? He told us during the PNQ of November, this is what the Deputy Prime Minister told us when we were talking about the amounts tendered by construction companies. This is what he said, Mr. Speaker. To a question of mine, he said, "Sir, let me again make it clear. I have neither confirmed nor denied the figure of 6 million because I simply do not know." This is what you said. Mr. Speaker, if I would ask the Honourable Deputy Prime Minister to submit to us the tendered amounts. You don't have to give us all, just the lowest and the highest for the projects, because you did not know at that time, but you do wish to have another 5 billion today. So let us have the tendered amounts for each side, because that will tell us about the competence or otherwise of the people working at NSLD and how they can gauge the cost. Mr. Speaker, I'll come now to next question. I think, what is it, 6? 6. Letter of awards haven't been issued yet. I understand they will be issued, inshallah, in a few days. And only letters of intent have been issued to these 14 companies. Now, each of these 14 companies have been given one or more sites to bid upon. It's not as if you're asked to bid for any number. You are told or agreed you will bid for 1, 2, 3. Maybe it's because it's near your house, because it's near whatever. Anyway, I understand that these 14 companies each bid for a number of housing projects. And they are given an amount. This is where the 2.7 billion rupees. Now, the Honourable Minister of Finance is not an accountant, but 2.7 million is not the cost of the house. I hope you don't think that is, because we have serious problems otherwise for the national accounts. It is not the cost of the house, 2.7. It is the cost of construction and the internal cost. It is not the cost of the house. The cost of the house is something else. Now, they've been given the cost of construction and the on-site works. They said, okay, keep to this 2.7 million rupees. And so, but submit us your project. This is the area we need. We need, obviously, a toilet. We need this, a kitchen. We need this and the other. And they say then one is going to make a house like this, the other one will make a house like that, and the third one will make a house like that. Anyway, all these houses on different sites, different drainage issues, different topography, different, but you want the same price. It's a bit odd. But you want the same price wherever the houses are. It's a bit of a dream in itself. Okay, so you want the same house. Now, there is no competitive bidding. That's my problem. How do we know that we have value for money? How do we know that each and every contractor, one of them I think I just had his account seized, no? How do we know that each and every of these contractors are going to provide you with value for money, given that you have so many sites, and I think 5 project managers at NSLD, who are young guys, most of them, they are going to determine value for money for a project worth in all about 30 billion rupees in a few days? Does that make sense? Does that make sense? That they are going to do that? They're going to work on the sewerage, they're going to make on the drainage, they're going to work on the canalization, they're going to work on all this and the construction. Some will be ground plus one, some will be just ground floor. I mean, it's huge. So the problem here is without a competitive, and the question I'm going to ask here is, without a competitive process, how do you ensure value for money? Because the only way that we've learned to get value for money is in a competitive process. If you have one side, a few people compete for it, as many people as possible compete for the project, and you take the lowest price. That is how textbook style we learn how to get value for money. We don't know any other way of looking for value for money. Now you have invented a new way of obtaining value for money. You tell me what you want to construct, I will have a look at it. The same guys that got it wrong, 6.2 million, 13.5 million, they are going to tell us that these guys will get 2.7 value. Of course, they thought the house was going to be 1 million, it costs 13 million. Anyway, how do we ensure value for money without a competitive bidding process? Question 7, Mr. Speaker. Question 7. What is the true cost of the land? Let's come to what the Honourable Minister of Finance told us. The cost of the land, he said, is 2.7 million. That is the cost of construction, plus the on-site works. What about the off-site works? How is the electricity going to come there? Virtual? How do you come there? How will water get there? This is not cost. Something I missed maybe in my studies. What about the land? The land has a cost whether or not it is government land. It has value. Whether you bought it or didn't buy it, it is still. Because if you didn't, you could always sell it. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying the cost. What is the real cost? Don't try and put a number of costs under the carpet just to hide the incompetence of the NSLD. And this is what's going to happen. We are told that CWA will take part of the cost. How much? Post CWA, it will be the water consumers who pay for it. It is CEB, and you've just increased the rates. CEB also will take part of the cost. Then it will be consumers, electricity consumers will pay. Tell us what is the true cost of the house. What is the cost of the land? What is the cost or the value of the land? What is the cost of the buildings? What is the cost of the off-site works? And what is the cost to the NSLD? So as I know, the guys at NSLD are not working for free. They have nice offices, I hear, etc. So what is the cost of all this? What is the markup that NSLD should be putting on these houses? 5%, 10%, less, I don't know. So what is the cost per house? What about now the quality? I'm not going to be that long. What about the quality of construction, Honourable Deputy Prime Minister? I hear, it would be shocking if it were true, that we are going to do away with the performance bond. People will no longer, the contractors will no longer, you'll confirm, perhaps? A nod? No, no, no? Perhaps give us a sign? Apparently, no sign from the Deputy Prime Minister. Apparently, there will not be any performance bonds required from these contractors. No. So they get 900 houses, so many houses to do, and no performance bond, is that correct? You know, okay, no sign of life. Okay, so no performance bond is, I hope, untrue. I hope untrue, because we want the quality of the construction. Apart from that, who will supervise this huge chantier? 8,000, who will supervise? You can have it fantastic on paper, but who will say that the contractors will actually abide to what is on the paper? It is a huge amount of work, very professional work, dedicated work that needs to be done. And many of these contractors will actually subcontract the work to far smaller subcontractors. Many of them will not be doing it themselves. Many of them are actually in India at the moment recruiting people. Fair enough. But, you know, what if these people are not capable enough? In India, Madagascar, Bangladesh, whatever. So, quality of the work. People will be buying, will be paying about a third of their hard-earned money, will be paying for these houses. What if they start to crumble in a few years' time, after the election? What if they crumble? What if they leak, like so many houses have leaked in the past? What if all this happens? What will be done, Mr. Speaker, to guarantee? Are you asking for a bond? No performance bond? What about a guarantee of construction? How many years are these contractors, many of them, I think you've twisted their hand to construct? What is the guarantee period? That's my question now. How many years are you going to guarantee this house? Not NSLD, because we don't want it to come out of the taxpayers' money. We want the contractors to guarantee. And I'm going to ask the Deputy Prime Minister, we need to have a contract, a specimen contract, but you're going to sign in the name of the taxpayers for about 21 billion rupees construction cost only. What is the guarantee period? Don't forget to tell us that later, please. And what about the performance bond? What about new technologies? I hear some of them will be using new technologies. I hope not prefabricated, eh? I hope not prefab, because that's not, they won't have difficulty in adding more rooms, etc., when you have expanding the house, when you have prefabricated. Tell us, what are the technologies that you are expecting? It's basic cement, mortar, and bricks, as we are used to, or are you allowing in some of these projects new technologies, Mr. Deputy Speaker? Now, Mr. Speaker, sorry, I deputized you for the wrong reason. Now, one of few last questions. The cost to the person. How much? Last week you told us you were not clear about the cost to the purchaser. I know why. Because you don't know the cost of the house yet. Because you're saying 2.7 million. Some people are saying we can't construct it for less than 3.2 million. And this is why you cannot tell us yet what is the cost to the purchaser, because you're not sure yet about what is the cost to the NSLD. That will be interesting. And the money, I presume, will be financed by NSLD itself. If it is, that's 1/3 or so. What is the interest rate that you'll be charging to the people, Mr. Speaker? And virtually finished. So, Mr. Speaker, in conclusion, I'm saying that 2021 there was a budget speech, 12,000 houses to be constructed. We were told we had problems getting the land. Well, the Prime Minister, when he was Minister of Finance, told us in 2011 that he already had 1,000 acres. But I don't know what happened. Maybe that didn't come through. Now, there was, I have it here, if you want to be reminded. Now, so 12,000 units, 2 years later, not a single letter of award yet issued. And the problem is that we have the feeling that this is, in fact, a huge vote-buying exercise, constituency, huge vote-buying exercise. It has to be done at all cost before the next election, at all costs and at any cost, Mr. Speaker. So in conclusion, we can only proceed, Mr. Speaker, with full and complete transparency. I think we will get this from by his body language from the Honourable Deputy Prime Minister later on. A huge amount of public money is involved. Billions of purchasers' money will be paid to buy these houses, will be borrowed and paid. Democracy is transparency. The road to hell is paved with good intentions. Let us try to avoid this and try to get to a situation where this Assembly, with full information, is able to support what you're proposing, or decide, in fact, that all this is totally unacceptable in our country. Let us have the information. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me the floor to participate in the Supplementary Appropriation 2022-2023 bill. Let me, at the very outset, say that the supplementary appropriation of funds is a recurrent feature in the yearly budgetary exercise. The House and all of us here know very well that the provision for additional funds is not only legal, but is also enshrined in our Constitution. Section 105(3) of the Constitution provides that where there is a need for expenditure and the amount appropriated is insufficient, then a supplementary estimate showing the sums required shall be laid before the Assembly, and a supplementary appropriation bill shall be introduced and voted. The point I want to make, Mr. Speaker, is that there is nothing wrong and certainly nothing sinister in requesting for additional funds for the normal appropriate established procedure that is applied in the circumstances whenever the need arises. Mr. Speaker, I have listened very carefully to the intervention of the Honourable Leader of the Opposition. I wonder what the Honourable Leader of the Opposition is insinuating. Is he trying to say that there is Malden on our side? The NSLD was created to facilitate the whole construction project, which we all agree is a massive project. I leave it to the Deputy Prime Minister to enlighten the House about the whole role of the NSLD. Besides, we all know that the NHDC already has ongoing projects, and handling the construction of 12,000 housing units, a project of this magnitude would have impacted on their ongoing projects, as such penalizing the most vulnerable. So the NSLD has been created just to facilitate the construction of these 12,000 houses. Now, coming to La Valette, I totally disagree with the Honourable Member of the Honourable Leader of the Opposition on La Valette project. La Valette, Mr. Speaker, is not our baby. This project was initiated by your friends, by the Labour Party in 2008. So, Honourable Leader of the Opposition, quel toupet. We could have, Mr. Speaker, we could have left the families living at La Valette without any help and support. But what have we done? Since we came in office, we have done our best to regulate the situation of the beneficiaries of La Valette. This is the reality. This is what we have done. How, Honourable Leader of the Opposition, how can you come here and say things which are inaccurate, unacceptable, coming from a Leader of the Opposition? Mr. Speaker, I know the file in depth. I have worked on the file together with my colleague, Honourable Alan Gano. On the contrary, most of the house now are occupied. We have 199 houses. 197 are occupied. Only 2 are vacant. So, Honourable Leader of the Opposition, I find myself very, very difficult to accept what you are saying. You know, they were living in conditions which were not appropriate. We have worked. I have personally met some of the beneficiaries. I have brought a paper to cabinet. They have been able to buy the state land for a modic sum of 2,000 rupees. So, in a word, Mr. Speaker, we have providing the beneficiaries with the opportunity to purchase the housing unit. Many have expressed an interest to purchase. Now, the leader of the opposition said that the place was unlivable. So, if the place was unlivable, so why the Labour Party has chosen that site in 2008? Now, as far as I remember, 18 beneficiaries have already effected full payment, so they have become owner of the house, and 4 is in process of getting their title deed. The files are before a notary. So this is the situation of La Valette. So it is not correct to come in the house and say things which are not appropriate, Honorable Leader of the Opposition. Now, coming to housing project, for us, Mr. Speaker, nothing is more important than tackling the housing issue. We all agree that a house is the first unit of society. Next to food and clothing, a house is one of the basic needs of men. Without a roof, it is very difficult for a person to secure employment, raise their children, and live a normal life. On this front, Mr. Speaker, we believe that owning your home is good. Good for the person, good for families, good for communities, and good for the country as a whole. Therefore, it is our duty as a government to provide decent housing to the people. In fact, social housing has been a part of our government program 2020-2024. We believe it is the right and dignity of every person to have a house. As has been mentioned by my colleague, the Honourable Minister of Finance, in the budget 2020-2021, our government announced the construction of 12,000 residential units. I will not dwell on the eligibility criteria for social housing. I think what is more important, Mr. Speaker, is keeping the houses affordable. Simply building more houses without consideration of their affordability will not solve the housing issue. We know that the vulnerable community will never be able to pay the price of a house, that is why our government would rather pay 2/3 of the cost of one housing unit. It is good to know that the cost of construction of one housing is around 2.7 million. The beneficiary will pay only around 900,000, so around 1.8 million will be subsidized by government. Mr. Speaker, let us look at what the previous government did from 2010-2014, a period just before our first mandate. Allow me to quote from their government program 2010-2015. Paragraph 122 read as follows. Government will complete the construction of some 550 low-cost housing units by February 2011 on 11 sites across the island. 10,000 additional housing units will be constructed for lower and middle income groups. Some 1,000 acres of land to be made available within the context of the government MSPA deal will be used for the construction of the new housing units, end quote. The question is, how many houses were constructed, Mr. Speaker? Only 548. Very good on paper, Mr. Speaker. Very good on paper, mere words, which have not been acted upon. Now they have the cheek to question our commitment on which we are delivering. Let us now see, Mr. Speaker, how many housing units have been constructed by our government from 2015 to date. It is good to know because I have just told the House what they have done, but let us see what we have done so far. And, Mr. Speaker, we have to take into account that we have been severely hit by the COVID-19 pandemic for some 3 years, we all agree. We are still being impacted by the long-term effects of the crisis. In spite of that, Mr. Speaker, from 2015 to date, our government has constructed, who can tell us? 4,100 housing units, Mr. Speaker. From 2010 to 2015, 548 houses only, 5 long years of inaction. You have failed on the housing project. Le gouvernement d'alors, Monsieur le Président, n'avait aucune compétence en matière de logement. No commitment. Whereas, Mr. Speaker, our government has delivered on our housing project. From 2015 to date, 4,100 houses constructed. This is the truth. The simple truth, Mr. Speaker, is that whenever MSM is in government, more homes are being built. This is the truth. This is the reality. So, coming to the House to play politics on housing project is not your cup of tea. Mr. Speaker, construction of houses, Mr. Speaker, I think we need to agree that construction of houses is not an easy task. The Ministry of Housing has encountered many challenges relating to house construction and has had to examine a range of key issues in order to proceed with the project. Identification of land, geotechnical surveys have had to be carried out to assess whether the land is suitable and buildable, and availability of state land, due to which we have had to purchase private land. Lawyers in the House would know that the purchase of private land is in itself a lengthy procedure. You need to communicate to the notary documents. So that's why this project has taken so much time, because it is a massive project, a major project. And besides, the COVID-19 pandemic has flared up. Our building project took a very hard hit. This has significantly undermined the progress of this project. On top of this, we have had to face the far-reaching consequences of the Russia-Ukraine war. The increase of price in construction has been a direct consequence of the war. That's why we have had now to ask for more funds. There has been an increase in the cost of construction. The prices of cement and other construction materials have increased considerably. This is the truth, this is reality. I can tell the House that despite all the challenges, the work is well underway. In fact, my colleague, the Deputy Prime Minister, Honorable Obigadu, keeps Cabinet informed of all bottlenecks on a weekly basis. Hurdles are addressed for collective decisions. We do know that our colleagues, the DPM, is working hard to catch up on lost time due to COVID-19 and the war in Ukraine. Now, Mr. Speaker, the construction of 12,000 housing units is not the first social housing project announced by our government. The House will recall that in the budget 2017-2018, our government took the decision to address the needs of vulnerable communities. What have we done? We earmarked 10% of NHDC houses for beneficiaries who are eligible under the Social Register of Mauritius and who are not owners of a plot of land. A new measure for the vulnerable people. This measure is to help those most in need. On this side of the House, we recognize the right of everyone to an adequate standard of living for himself and the family, and the continuous improvement of living conditions. Pourquoi, Monsieur le Président, le gouvernement est venu avec la mise en application de 10% des maisons réservées aux SAM? Pourquoi, Monsieur le Président? Pour différentes raisons. D'abord, pour préserver la vie des familles vulnérables et surtout l'avenir des enfants. Habiter une maison est une condition centrale. Dans les familles à faible revenu, les enfants rencontrent davantage de difficultés scolaires et les mauvaises conditions de logement sont un des facteurs qui pèsent sur leurs avenirs. Donc, accélérer la construction des maisons est une priorité de notre gouvernement. Les familles vulnérables sont des citoyens à part entière et non entièrement à part. Nous sommes toujours à leurs écoutes pour cerner leurs besoins. Nous avons compris que le logement social est crucial pour eux. Avoir un toit au-dessus de leur tête leur permet d'avoir une meilleure vie. Ils peuvent avoir un bon emploi et subvenir aux besoins de leur famille. Donc, réserver 10% des maisons, c'est-à-dire si nous allons construire 8000 maisons, 10% des maisons, 800 maisons, seront réservées aux personnes qui sont sur le registre social. Un grand pas, Monsieur le Président, pour les personnes qui en ont le plus besoin. Nous voulons nous assurer que les plus vulnérables de notre société puissent vivre dans la dignité et profitent du développement économique de notre pays. Le rôle d'un bon gouvernement est de s'assurer que les développements économiques s'accompagnent d'un développement social équilibré. Dans ce projet de construction de logement social, notre gouvernement s'assure que personne n'est laissé pour compte. Monsieur le Président. So, the 10% NHDC housing scheme brings a major change to the lives of our SRM beneficiaries who would otherwise not have been able to afford these houses. A house of up to 60 square meters with all amenities. Now, at this stage, Mr. Speaker, maybe should I remind the House that in 2011, small, tiny houses of an extent of not more than 30 square meters were built? I don't need to remind the Honourable Leader of the Opposition. He was himself Minister of Social Integration from 2011 2010 to 2011, and Minister of Finance from 2011 to 2014. So may I ask the honourable member, what has he done for vulnerable families in the years when he had the opportunity to address the housing issue? Huh? What have you done? Mr. Speaker, I don't mean to be nasty. This is not my nature, but I'm just stating facts after having heard what the Leader of Opposition have said earlier. At your time, Honourable Leader of the Opposition, no consideration was given to uphold the dignity of the most needy. Mr. Speaker, tiny houses. Do you remember, can you still remember, Honourable Leader of the Opposition, the size of the house? How much was it? How much? 30 square meters. Only 30 square meters. And I don't know in the house how many of you still remember how at that time the houses were qualified. Who can tell me? Bois d'allumettes. So, tiny houses, small houses of an extent of not more than 30 square meters were built. And with a roof, listen to this, with a roof in corrugated iron sheets. Mr. Prime Minister, with a roof in corrugated iron sheets. Look at the way vulnerable families were treated at that time. No respect for their dignity. We are, Honourable Leader of the Opposition, members on the other side. You know what? We are facing problems with housing because nothing has been done by you. And when I am now talking of the houses constructed in 2010, 2011. So, you know what? When the persons who live in those houses, in those tiny houses, they were always facing problems in bad weather. One strong wind, the roof is gone. Mr. Speaker, as Minister of Social Integration, I have myself visited those houses, and I can tell you, the houses are not to standard. And we have done our best to help those families. And now the Leader of the Opposition have the cheek to speak about decent houses. Huh? So I think, you know, when we have debate of that sort, I think it is important to come to the House because the public is watching us. I think it is important to come to the House to state facts which are correct and not to mislead the population. So since 20...
Minister saying we came to the House to mislead the population. Did you hear that? Can you ask her to withdraw that?
I'm just stating facts.
No, not facts. He said it's not correct to come to the House to mislead the population. This is the word.
I listen to your point of order. I'll rule on that. Continue.
Have I mentioned your name? Mr. Speaker, NHDC housing units are purchased by the NEF at the same price at which NHDC sell to its buyers. The NEF thereafter then they sells their housing units to the eligible SRM beneficiaries who are not owners of any property. So what is interesting, Mr. Speaker, the cost of the house is subsidized up to 80%, and the beneficiary pay only 20% over a period of 20 to 25 years. So as you can see, Mr. Speaker, we are doing our best to support those beneficiaries, to support those who are on the SRM register. So since 2019 to date, we have been able, one might say it is not enough, we have been able to provide 138 NHDC housing units to our beneficiaries. I understand that 95 more NHDC units are expected to be acquired by NEF by April 2023. As you can see, our policy is not to leave our people behind. So we are doing our best. We are working towards an inclusive society. Mr. Speaker, on a concluding note, I would like to highlight the relentless efforts being made by our government to make a real difference to the lives of so many vulnerable families. We are sincere in our wish. I wish also to reassure the House that the additional funds being voted today will be judiciously used in the best interest of the most vulnerable. A good government has to focus on the well-being of those who need our support the most. In all our actions, Mr. Speaker, we have put people at the center. We will continue to work hard to deliver our commitments. I'm confident we on this side of the House will make a real difference in housing policy. The commitment and dedication of our Prime Minister to the most vulnerable is an example. No hurdle has ever made him backpedal. A true leader. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable members, I'll suspend the sitting for 1.5 hours.